Adam Whitty. Welcome back to another episode of Build Your Authority.
Ooh, hard.
There it is. Hi, Adam. How are you, sir?
Joe, I'm good. It is great to see you, and I am excited for today.
Yeah, last season we talked about, I jokingly said, Adam, what's the ROI in authority and what's the return? How do we keep track of what authority is? And we somehow have found a way to do so with something called the authority maturity model. But before we get into it and we get our guests in here, I'd like to talk about why this was important because you and I have often talked about on the show that a lot of the people that walk through our doors who want to become authorities, they're business people and they're successful business people for a reason. Like they know how pie graphs work and how Excel docs work. So they need to have some sort of tangible proof as to how their journey is going. So why was it important to introduce this authority maturity model?
Yeah, well, you nailed it on the head. Authority is a concept that people understand, they latch onto, and they see the relevance and importance of. But the first question is, well, how am I going to get there? And how am I going to measure if it's successful? And what I love about the authority maturity model, and the creator of that is our guest today, is that that is the roadmap of this is the plan that you're going to follow. And then here are the metrics that we're going to use to measure success as you progress along this model. So it answers the two biggest questions that an entrepreneur, a CEO, a leader has, which is what plan do I follow? And then how do I measure the plan to determine if it's working?
Awesome. And you mentioned our guest is Beth LaGuardia Cooper. Beth, welcome to Build Your Authority.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Adam. It's great to be here.
So, Beth, as you know, with the show, we're all about helping folks build their authority, and on this episode, we're going to talk about how we're keeping track of how that authority is built. So, you've been in marketing for a long time. We don't want to age anyone on this podcast, as we know. But now that it's something you developed, why was it important, and why were you inspired to build it here at Advantage?
Yeah. Well, this seemed like an obvious thing to do, to be honest with you, because we need to have plans so we know where we're going and we need to be able to measure our progress along the way. So we were doing that in a variety of places and already through our amazing strategists and the experts we have working with our authorities, we had all kinds of frameworks that we were already putting to use and giving them results tracking along the way. But we weren't necessarily doing it in a comprehensive manner, and we didn't necessarily have documented in a unified place our overarching thematic framework. So it just seemed like the right next step.
And Adam, you're pretty pragmatic. Were you skeptical at first when this idea was brought up? Because you've been in the authority business for a long time, but no, there hasn't been a way to actually quantify this work that we're doing here.
No, the pragmatic part of me is what loved it because it was a logical, rational plan with exact black and white ways to measure success against the plan. So that part of me absolutely loved it. And I think as an entrepreneur, as a CEO myself, understanding how they think, I knew that if we could say, here is a plan that you can follow, and here are the measuring sticks that you will use to determine success, I felt very confident that that would resonate with people.
Awesome. And if you go to our website, Beth, you do see this authority maturity model people can sign up for. So let's start with a quick overview of the 5 stages of the model, because one of the things we like numbers and we like it in sequential order. So let's go from 1 through 5 real quickly, and then we're going to dig into it during the conversation.
The first is really the emerging area. So your on ramp may be that you're interested in authority, but you're not really, you don't have the credentials yet to be an expert in your field. And that's what you're working on. So you might be aspiring, but you're probably not ready for all of the authority measures that get you up the continuum. The second is that you're tactically leveraging some of the elements of authority. And that might mean that you're speaking in your industry, you've been asked to be on a panel in your field. It could be that you have dabbled in earned media or you're using social media to build an audience. But typically, you're only doing a few things and you're not necessarily doing those in a strategic manner. The next would be that you're operationally leveraging this, meaning that you're putting together plans and you're amassing and putting resources against your authority building. So you're actually being a lot more intentional about taking your expertise and sharing it with others. And that really is a turning point in the building of authority. That's the place where you come out from being someone who is typically just advising others within your industry or in a very small circle of your network to sharing your knowledge more broadly and providing your perspective on trending conversations as they come about based upon your experience. The fourth area is strategic. So if you're moving from operational to strategic, your plans and the success of those plans are really intertwined with leveraging authority at all places of your business. And I would say, this isn't just something that you think about as a way to market the business or build the brand, but also a way that you celebrate your customers, your clients, a way that you give back to the virtuous circle to inspire the next generation, and the way that you ultimately perhaps may step use as a stepping stone to something new and different for you or your business. That leads to the last area, which is really the ultimate. And it's a place where you start to get incoming media requests. You're known as the expert. No one wants to talk to anyone else in the industry besides you because you really are the guru in what you espouse. And that differentiated arena, is probably only achieved by a very, very small fraction of a percent of people. But it's probably important to say that not all of us aspire to that place. Some of us are very, very happy in that strategic or operational place of authority maturity. So that's the continuum, and there are many, many, many steps along that way.
Awesome. So the initial step, just so we can have like a base level here, it's basically the identification of you starting this journey. It's almost like your first step forward, correct? That's what you mean by emerging?
Yes. So if you may not have been on the authority journey, but you may be more than an expert in your field. So you don't have to start at step one. That's also a beauty of this. You can come on at the on ramp that makes the most sense for you as an aspiring authority or as an authority today. And there's always room to grow. So that first step, that knowledgeable step, getting your credentials, I would think of that as someone who has probably spent not too many years in their field, or probably had too many experiences. They're probably more absorbing things that other authorities are providing, and just starting to enter the conversation on that road.
When you think about somebody that's a leader, right? Whether they're the founder and CEO of their own business or whether they're a leader within an existing organization, right? And why does a leader want authority? And the whole premise of the book that I wrote, The Authority Advantage, was that it's not about stroking your ego. It's about the more authority you have, the more impact you can have as a leader. And what authority is it's influence, it's trust, it's knowledge, it's competence, and it is being a place or a source that people look to for input, right? Whether that's advice, whether that's, hey, help me make a better decision, whether that's, what do you think I should do? And so it's very noble for leaders to want to seek authority if used in the right way, right? Authority for impact, not authority for ego. And to Beth's point, that emerging leader, that's somebody that probably has a title that conveys authority. Maybe they have an academic degree that would convey some authority, but it might be limited to just those few things. And they're at the base of the mountain, and getting to Everest requires a whole lot more, which Beth's going to tell us about in stage 2 through 5.
Yeah, and what's interesting about it too, Adam, what Beth mentioned earlier was the fact that not everyone's going to start at the same point. And I think probably, Beth, a lot of people that walk through our door are probably getting here around the step 2 or 3 this stage, right? So let's get into the specific tactics used in stage 2, which is tactical stage.
You're exactly right, Joe, because many of our members come to us between stages 2 and 3. And one of the things that they're trying to figure out is, well, I know what it looks like to be an authority. I know other people, industry icons in my space, or others out there who have the level of authority that I'm looking for, but I'm not really clear on what steps I can take to get me there. And so typically when we're looking at someone's authority maturity, we're looking holistically at what they're doing in rented, earned, and owned media, what their goals are, how what their brand strategy looks like. Do they have a really clear sense of what they stand for, the problem they're trying to solve, and the audience that they're trying to reach, the impact that they're looking to have. And ultimately, what are the resources and the commitment that they're willing to put against that? Because this is not something that typically happens overnight. Wouldn't it be great if it did? But most of the very meaningful goals that we have in life do take effort and time to come to fruition. And that's why we take a look really holistically, not just at you, but also at your market space to understand where the gaps are that you could fill in with your differentiated message, as well as what your audience is looking for. So, what are they valuing? Where are they showing up for conversations? And probably when you're at stage 2, you are reaching some of those platforms, and you probably have some dabbled with some success into some of these areas. But likely there are strategic bets, as we like to call them, that you can place with the right assets and the right media platforms to accelerate your path along that continuum to being known more as that authority that we're talking about, that you have aspired to, that you might see in someone else. So there's a lot to it. There are like 125 measures on the continuum that we're taking a look at. But at the end of the day, you can't do 125 things. You have to start somewhere. And it's really important to narrow down the 2 or 3 or 5 strategic bets that make up the formula that's right for you.
And Joe, the word that you should think about as you progress along this model is strategic, right? So the more you progress along the model from stage 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, the more strategic you become, right? Somebody that's in stage 1 or stage 2, they may have a limited amount of authority already, but it wasn't necessarily strategic and it wasn't intentional, meaning they were not taking intentional actions for the purpose of building their authority, building their thought leadership. As you get into stage 3 and then 4 and certainly in 5, the amount of strategy that you place to the task grows in significance, and the intentionality of all the actions that you take in building authority grows in size as well.
Awesome. And so let's bridge it a little bit here then, Beth. 3 and 4, like Adam mentioned, operational to that strategic. How do we help people make this jump? Because I think this might be sort of like the sticking point for a lot of people, and it always is. It's sort of like the 3 arc structure of a movie. Like that climax always comes, towards the end of Act 2. But tell us about how we help people bridge the gap there of 3 and 4.
So one of the things early on that we're taking stock of is where you have strengths. And where do you maybe have areas of opportunity that can be a multiplier effect for you? And an example there would be a book. If you've written a book on a topic, you gain a level of instant credibility and trust that very few, if any, other things can give you. So if you have that, then are we leveraging that as successfully as we can? If you don't, then let's talk about that as the next stage of attention for building your authority. In addition to that, let's think about audience. So you may have built an audience that is living on a platform that you don't own. And for example, if that's TikTok, um, what if that audience goes away? Then how do you think about migrating that audience to a new platform that again you don't own, or think about building that audience as an owned community that you're talking to directly and that you don't have to worry about losing um, out with something out of your control. So there can be different strategic decisions, and they're never made in a vacuum because it also has a lot to do with what's going on in the environment that you're either leveraging as opportunity or protecting based upon the potential risk. So some of those can be it can be addressed. Just to wrap up, another asset that would be a multiplier effect, I would say speaking is a typical goal of many of our members. And typically they're speaking already in industry circles. Maybe they're serving on industry panels, or maybe they're already on the stages of some of the industry conferences that are most meaningful in their field. Often they're looking to springboard outside of their industry and be known more broadly for their message outside and beyond just the field in which they currently work. And what I see a lot of times is that members who we work with have the intent for executives within their team to start serving on those large platforms within the industry, and they focus on the important conferences or other speaking engagement opportunities that are go beyond their industry and transcend that space. And so that is a typical place of a more strategic authority.
Beth, obviously, stage one is emerging, stage two is tactical, and now stage three is operational. What is someone that's at stage three in that operational category? What does that look, feel, and sound like?
So I would say that they can attribute some level of success against their goals to their authority at that point. They are beginning to be known as maybe an expert, or maybe even what would be better, a visionary in their field. Um, but where often they need to lean in and away from is leaning away from being someone who's known for espousing the best practices of their field to someone who is actually challenging the status quo and identifying ways that the paradigm needs to be shifted to address challenges that are coming down the road. So often that's a migration in message that we see and the issues that one tackles. So I think that's often getting out of your comfort zone, because in the comfort zone, you're addressing what you've known, and what you've become known for is really being the best at what you do, and thinking bigger about how you can have an impact on the future by charting the course. So that often it addresses brand strategy. We would look at content creation. We would perhaps look at a body of work that's currently out there that you have and you're using for your authority, but you perhaps need to revisit and develop a new framework or new thinking around. And often, someone who's at that stage is starting to see that they're being asked by others, by media, by event organizers, by um, audiences to address a challenge or address thinking. They want their perspective is actually being sought after. So we're going to be looking to place one in the conversations where that can be the case, so we can build upon that authority by association.
And so let's get to 4 and 5. What are the big differences? Obviously, 5 is differentiated when you've reached sort of the end game of it all. But what are the big differences between the 4 and 5 stage? It's almost like, using football references, like getting to the title game, but then like losing the title game and then not making it to the Super Bowl. Like, what are the big differences between 4 and 5?
There are so many things that I would say differentiate that person at the differentiated state. But an example would be, I am working in your field, and the only person I want to partner with is you. And if you're not available, I'm not even sure if I want to partner with anyone else, because no one comes close to your unique superpowers, your unique authority, and your unique capabilities. So you've really differentiated yourself. And when it comes to media, it's the same thing. I want to speak to this person, and if I can't speak to this person, well, I might take a second opinion, but it really matters what this person thinks. And you would start to see that with pricing power. You would start to see that with marketing power. You don't have to spend money on marketing. Adam has said this before, but what if you didn't have to make another sales call ever? And that would be the level of authority of someone who's differentiated, because all of the requests and everything that you're looking for is incoming. And probably at the end of the day, from a fulfillment perspective, the way you're spending your time is exactly the way you want to spend your time, with the clients you want to spend your time with the work you want to spend your time with. You're able to turn down things that come your way that don't fit your strategy or your goals head on. And so that's really probably one of the greatest benefits here, because nobody has the lock on getting more time in this world. So if we can better use it to our advantage as an authority, it's a key benefit.
And Joe, maybe let's rewind for a quick second. Beth, give us an overview of stage 4, that's strategic. If you've accomplished or are at stage 4 in your authority journey, what does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that sound like?
This is probably the ultimate place for most of us, because very few people will be past this stage. This person has probably written a book on their topic of expertise. They are probably very active in social media. This is incredibly important. Social media is not only not going away, but we need to double down at making sure that we have the presence in these platforms where our audiences are convening, and we're actively a part of the conversation. We're staying relevant. Um, Also, that person is likely responding to earned media requests and making themselves available for earned media requests with top tier platforms, media outlets that are looking for experts and authorities to talk on a topic. In addition to that, they're creating content for a variety of other platforms. Um, it's that, for example, if that person is an entrepreneur and they identify with the entrepreneurial mindset, then creating content for entrepreneur as a website, reaching the 20 million people who are there, they're a partner of ours. So, example, they're then that may be the perfect place for them to make the bigger impact that they're seeking. But typically, it's a formula that works for you, but it's multi-platform, and it's starting with really strong foundational assets, like a book.
And Adam, there is a bit of a stereotype that successful people aren't very patient. I don't know where it came from, but it is true. So, Beth, I think one of the first questions you may get asked when you discuss the authority maturity model with future authorities or people starting their journey, or maybe in the middle of it, is like, Beth, how long is this going to take? Is there a number we could put on that? Obviously, there are stages, so each stage could take a certain amount of time. But do you have any idea in terms of like how long this journey would take folks?
Well, number one, it's actually not a journey that has an end. So, in order just to maintain your authority, maintain your presence, you have to continually work at it. And so that's even the treading water part. How long will it take to see results? I think it's really important to sit down with your team and just with yourself and set realistic milestones and expectations, so you can identify things that are very concrete along the way. Like, I want to double the number of followers that I have in social media, or I want to complete writing this book and get it out into the marketplace, and so on and so forth. Those are all things that um, take time, but you can start to realize results from very early on. And I will give you a good example of someone who actually Adam and I both saw when we were in Phoenix in November. One of our members talked with us about his book recently published in the spring, and some of the springboards to success that he was realizing with that once it was published. And one was he handed this book out to his clients, and one of those book mailings turned into a request to be on a corporate board, which he was told about, and he could trace that back to prospective client conversations that began and then resulted in sales on 4 occasions that more than paid for that investment within a couple months. So um, it could be short, or it could also be that one's goal is to generate 1 million followers, and frankly, that is a wonderful aspirational goal, and it may or may not ever be attained. Because of very few people, Bill Gates and Richard Branson and so on, who have that level of followers. But at the same time, the throwing your hat over the wall to a big goal is important at the same time, because although that may be something that you're always striving for, the amazing results that you can achieve along the way, if you're open to and watching for them, can be really incredible, more than you've ever imagined.
Joe, I'm going to use a analogy that I think is quite helpful. The late Jim Rohn, who was a very famous inspirational, motivational speaker, he would say the reason to have the ambition and desire to become a millionaire is not for the $1 million+ that you'll have, but for the person that you must become in order to attain it. And I'll translate that for a minute to authority, right? The reason to seek out the journey of building your authority is not to get to the top of the mountain to beat your chest and say, I'm an authority, but for the person that you must become in order to attain it. And, when you think about this authority maturity model that Beth has demonstrated and discussed, from stage 1 to stage 5, the transformation that must occur within you to get from stage 1 to stage 5 is significant. And some people hear transformation and their translation to that is work. Like, oh, that's going to be a lot of work. And the answer is it is. I mean, let's make no mistake. In order to get from stage 1 to stage 5, there is serious work that you will have to do. But the better word to associate with stage 1 to stage 5 is opportunity. When you get to stage 4 and stage 5, the number of opportunities that will come to you, that will come to your business, will be astounding. And that is the real reason, and the real word that I want people to latch onto. The person that you will become as a result of taking this authority journey, it will make you a better person, and the end result of that will be opportunities that probably you never even would have imagined possible beforehand will come to you.
I love that. And Beth, I feel like authority may be a new word for a lot of people, but personal branding, I think a lot of people are more aware of. How does personal branding play a role in the authority maturity model? Because I think that for most folks, they're always like, yeah, I want to be a brand. I want to be the brand. I want to be a brand. But like the word authority may be something that they're maybe just starting to do. What are some of the, maybe something like crossover, some of the parallels between the two?
Also, people may call this thought leadership. And so being familiar with building a personal brand and developing thought leadership, those are all akin to authority. Um, we like to use authority, but similarly, what you're doing is establishing your purpose, knowing your why, creating your building your audience, and understanding the content and the messages that are going to differentiate you in the space, and that you have something to say about, to make a difference. And obviously you need to know what action you're compelling people to take, and all of that sounds very similar to writing a creative brief in marketing or building a personal brand strategy. One page brand strategies look like this. And at the end of the day, this is really no different. But I will say that a lot of the people we work with are used to doing that for their corporate brand, that they're not used to doing that for their personal brand, them as people. And what we've all realized, especially over the last 5 years, is that consumers want to hear from their leaders. They want to hear from the people behind a brand more than they want to listen to the company with no person behind it. At the end of the day, people buy from people, people build relationships with people, not with companies and not with corporate brands. So it's a little bit of an uncomfortable space sometimes for a member to come out from behind the desk and begin to build their brand and try to reconcile how that sits with their corporate brand if they're still working in a corporate space. Um, so we come into this all of the time with members who say, "Well, how are these going to conflict, or will one take away from the other?" And the way to think about this is that building a personal brand is actually providing another gateway to your corporate brand. And in addition to that, it takes you out of the space where you're positioned for your company as an operator with something to sell. And as Adam talks about in his book, positions you as someone he's a thought leader with something to teach. So to do that, you've got to know what your brand stands for, and you've got to build that brand so that you are a trusted, credible expert on the topic that you're talking about.
Beth, Stephen Covey, the famous author, in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, rule number 2 was begin with the end in mind. That was the second habit. And I'm curious, how do the goals that one has affect their journey on their authority maturity model?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we talk about all the time at the outset. Let's start with that end in mind. Let's understand what you're aiming to achieve. And by the way, over time, we anticipate that that could change a little bit. Or hopefully you achieve those goals and you're then setting new goals. So we will start with the end in mind and use that for example, typically that goal might be to grow my business, to try new business opportunities, to be using that word opportunity. It may be to make an impact, a societal impact. I really want to start a movement on empathy, for example. A third might be I'm really looking to maintain my relevancy and cement my legacy in my field. I have a lot of knowledge and expertise to give back, and I want the next generation to have the benefit of that while I'm still in this space. Um, so it could be any of those things. And then we would take that goal and use all of the framework of the maturity model to help us understand where is it going to make most sense for you to invest to achieve those goals. And then let's take a look over time at not only your progress, but how the world around you is changing in a way that might influence how we might attack this in a different way because a new opportunity may have arisen or there may have been something that comes out that we may have to address.
And Adam, you talked earlier about the fact that, this is going to be work. Like if you want to go on this journey, it is work. But Beth, the great thing about what we're doing here at the Authority Company is we're here to help, aren't we, Beth?
That's what we do. And there all the time, we get asked for our thoughts on a particular issue or opportunity with our members. And a lot of time, it could be a longtime member who we've been working with forever, and they may ask us for our advice on something, and that ends up really kind of building into a whole conversation about entirely new opportunity. And frankly, sometimes those things are um, very straightforward, and other times, sometimes the goals that we put together or the opportunities, the roadmap that we put together looks nothing like they came in thinking, and ends up that it makes more sense to lean in other ways. So this is what we do, and we've seen so many different types of situations and member goals and specific circumstances that really coming back to the authority maturity model, it made a lot of sense to compile all of that knowledge and thinking in one place and use it as a living, breathing thing to continue to enhance and advance. So it's also not as if the model itself is a set it and forget it.
Nice. Adam, give you the final word on the authority maturity model, sir.
Well, building authority is one of the more fulfilling aspects of a person's professional journey. It can be. And the more authority you have, the more influence and the more impact that you can have, which is, I think, the reason why people take on a leadership position to begin with. And what I love about the model, and I credit Beth, who really is the pioneer and the creator of this, is that it helps structure a plan and it creates measuring sticks to determine success. And it's easy to identify where you should invest more calories and perhaps where you should invest less calories. So she's taken something that's abstract, that's aspirational, and she's really operationalized it in a way that people can put it into action to feel and see the benefits of it. And I absolutely love it. I think every single leader that wants to build authority should get familiar with this model that she's created, should use it as their guide and as their plan, and you'll reap the rewards as a result of that.
Awesome. And Beth, the model is available at theauthoritycompany.com. And if you click on authority, but if folks want to find out more about you, want to get in touch with you, if they have additional questions about the model, where should they start?
Or they can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Beth LaGuardia. Love to talk with you. And if we can help in any way, I'd love to find that out. Let's explore it.
Beth, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you both. It's been great to be here.
Adam, well done. Authority maturity model episode is in the can. And so I never asked you, Adam, have you taken a test? Have you taken the authority maturity model?
You better believe it. You better believe it. Beth's got me on the model.
Oh, Beth, let me bring you back in here. Where's Adam along in the stages of 1 through 5? Is he still is he
I'm
still
not
working?
a 5.
You're not a 5.
No,
I'm not a
no,
5.
he's not a 5. He's not a 5. I would say he's between 3 and 4. And actually, he's probably made a lot of progress on us this year in the last 12 months. And part of that is due to your work together on this podcast and his diligence and being a lot more active on social, which I think has just been a huge lift. And you can see the benefits of that. And all the members who are quick to comment and thank us and appreciate you calling them out. It's that personal touch.
And Joe, let me add one last thing. Authority is a journey. It's not a destination, right? And Beth said earlier that, it's not like you get to the top and you get the gold medal and say, I'm done. Because remember, your authority is your relevance. And if you get out of the game and stop playing, you immediately start losing relevance. And so as long as you want to be relevant in your industry or in your space or in your community, you've got to constantly be working on building and enhancing your authority. And when you stop, that's kind of when you start to disappear.
I love that. Great way to end it. Adam, I will see you next time on Build Your Authority.